Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Normally on this channel I'm making music or making videos about music, but today we're going to take a look at a bit of an area of personal interest for me, and that is the area of artificial intelligence image generation. A few months ago I watched a video about a program called Dall-E 2. Dall-E is an artificial intelligence that's been put together by a group called OpenAI, and it's really cool. So basically what Dall-E does is it collects images from all around the internet and puts it into its own intelligence, its own algorithms, its own stuff that I just don't understand. But what it can do with all this knowledge that it is essentially learned is figure out how to create images from scratch. Rather than compiling fragments of images that already exist on the internet, it's learned what keywords are associated with what types of images, what collections of pixels, and then it can recreate similar things with similar keywords. So over here is the Dall-E 2 interface, and we can see some examples of artworks that it has produced and also the prompts that were given. So let's take a look at this big one here. 3D render of a cute tropical fish in an aquarium on a dark blue background, digital art. And it's created exactly what has been described. This one over here, an expressive oil painting of a basketball player dunking depicted as an explosion of a nebula. So it's taking not just ideas that maybe exist in the real world, but it's taking collections of ideas and using that to reform and create new things. It can also copy the style of particular artworks. So some of these say digital art, others say photo, this says a Van Gogh style painting, so it can recreate all different types of images. One of the other things that it can do is generate variations of an image that it has been given. So you could put in an image of an apple on the beach, and it would recreate an apple on a beach. So what I thought might be fun to try is to feed this artificial intelligence some images of my own and see what it comes up with. So today we're going to give it some album covers of my previous releases and see what alterations it can make, what kind of similar images it comes up with. So to start off with, let's go over here to upload an image, and it pulls up this file here of all of my old album covers. So let's start with my most recent one, Doom and Dread. I've got it here, and it's accepted the image. And now we're going to click here, generate variations, and see what it comes up with. And in just a few short seconds, I'm going to leave this first one in real time so you can see how quickly it comes up with these ideas. Slowly loading, showing us some examples, and in not too long, here we are. So, it's come up with 5 variations of this original image. This one here, you can see it's got the helmet, and it's got some of the colors and the clattered elements down here. It's also recognized the skull in the original image and incorporated that into this helmet design here. If we go over to this other design, it's recognized the split down the middle of the 2 helmets, and this kind of nose shape here looks like it's taken that element, thinking about what a skull looks like. Over here, it's definitely recognized the skull and also this red metal down the bottom. Also, in all of these, even though sometimes there's been that line down the middle with the 2 different halves, like the original image, there's almost always some sense of symmetry between the 2. This one here is a little bit more cluttered, but still kind of that same color scheme, the red metal, and I really like this reflection here on top, that red metal reflecting with a light up the top. One of the things that I went back and forth on with the designer for this album cover was the reflection and the way the light interacted. I really like the final image of my own, but this AI seems to have captured that reflection and incorporated the lighting of the original image. And here another one, we can see a split here with red on one side, green on the other, and the white debris in the bottom. Super cool. All right, let's do another one. Let's do Male Atoms. There's the image, generate variations. So the Male Atoms album cover is a painting on canvas. Actually, let me just, here it is. I have the original canvas, acrylic on canvas. So this is the original. Let's see what it comes up with. Is it going to match the design? Is it going to recognize the medium? Let's find out. All right, so it's definitely got the color scheme here, and it's recognized the atomic kind of shape. What's interesting is it's taken the stars in the dark space, the negative space of this original image, it's recognized those white splotches, but here it's reinterpreted them as more electron trails. Again, similar variation and similar kind of almost paint stroke like surfaces. It's also got this nice little reflection here in the middle, and it's got the shape of that male symbol there. It hasn't got the arrow, but it's definitely got the line coming out of it, which is super cool. Wow, this one here looks really cool. It's a little bit different in terms of the shape. Instead of the 6 here, we've got, it looks like 8, but all interacting and going underneath each other. Super cool. It's got the blue in there. And this design is really interesting. It's like drop down the bottom. There's the circle of the male symbol and maybe something at the end, but no line connecting them. And then here, wow. And just this line that comes out of nowhere and doesn't end anywhere. Because it is not human, it doesn't understand exactly what it's creating. So sometimes you might see things like an arm that doesn't connect to a shoulder and a hand appearing out of nowhere. It sometimes has these weird artifacts that just don't quite make sense, but almost always look like they were created by a human mind, just with weird abstractions. Let's do a more geometric one here. Let's look at my album cover for The Last Lake Monster. Now this is taken, I took a kaleidoscope effect of a wavetable generator in Ableton. So these are little sound waves here in yellow and different waves in the wavetable in the grey, and that's kind of been kaleidoscoped out into this circular shape. So let's see what it comes up with for this particular album cover. Another interesting thing about the Lake Monster album cover is that I already used AI in its creation. I found an AI upscaler. The original image was too low resolution and you could see all these grains, but I wanted the nice fine lines that you can see in the final product. So I put it through an AI to figure out where those lines were, and it created a nice, crisp, clear image. But here, Dall-E has created entirely new images, recognizing the geometric kaleidoscope pattern, but this almost looks like it was drawn like crayons on black paper. This one here, again, similar. It's got those fragments of orange in the grey and black. Let's see if we get any that have that nice crisp line of the original. This one here, all smoothed out. Wow. And then the last one has a little bit more of that ring outside. Now they all have a similar amount of repetitions. There's 8 around this one. There's, again, 8 around this one. So what's interesting is, unlike the male atoms where sometimes it had the 6 rings and sometimes it had a little bit more, these ones here are pretty much all locked onto the fact that there are 8 around, even though I don't think the original has 8. Here, we've got them in pairs, but again, there's still 8 sets, whereas here is the original 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the original image had 10, but it's creating 8 in its repetitions. All right, let's do a couple more. Let's do It's Not Creepy. Now this one has some text, so it might pick up the text. It's also a photo, whereas the other ones were paintings or digital art. Let's see if it recognizes the photoreal nature of it. Maybe it might recognize some of the objects on the ground. Let's see what it comes up with. Wow, okay. Okay, so let's take a look at the original first. We've got a brick wall with some cracks, and then some party paraphernalia around here on the chair and the feather boa, and there's that typewriter text, and also the brick on the floor. So this one here, it's recognized the chair, it's recognized the plastic chair as well, but it's not really created a proper chair. This doesn't look like a real design that I've seen anywhere, but it's got the text in white this time, and it's got the brick wall here, and the lines in the brick. Even though it's not a crack like the original, there's still some lines in the building wall. All right, this one here is a complete mess. It looks like there's a table fallen over, and there's this black thing here that's just kind of appeared out of nowhere. But still, the words here, because it doesn't understand what words are written and doesn't understand how to put symbols in an order to create language, it's just copying the visual component of the letters. So you can kind of make out specific letters, but they don't form real words. This one here has a frame of letters, which is really interesting. It still has the chair, but it's a really weird warped chair, and it's created a table as well. So this one's recognized the wine bottle, and it's even put here a glass of some kind of liquid here, but then there's these weird spaces of just complete noise here, it just doesn't know what to do with the image, doesn't know what to recreate. And unlike the others, which were mostly against the flat wall, this looks like a wall on an angle. And this one, I think, is the most photoreal. It looks like it was taken with a camera because you have the chair in focus and then the background blurred out. So it's recognized that it's a photo from a camera, but it just doesn't understand everything that's going on. Wow. And the symbols here completely incoherent. Before we continue with the video, I want to talk a little bit about the ethics of artificial intelligence and image generation. Because this artificial intelligence doesn't understand the context of its creating, it can be potentially a tool to do some fairly unethical things. Now, Dall-E is currently closed for public access, meaning to be approved access, you have to join their waitlist and wait for them to approve your access. I was really lucky to be able to be given access to this tool. Not everyone can use it, at least at the moment. That's because Dall-E 2 is still an experiment. We don't know exactly what it can do or what it's capable of, but we do know that it's very powerful. There are limitations on what users can create with Dall-E and certain search terms that are not allowed. Anything relating to violence, sexual themes, racism, these topics or keywords related to them won't pass through Dall-E's interface. Another thing to be careful of is having Dall-E create faces of real people or generate variations on real people's faces. I've intentionally not used the cover of my album, The Scottish Album, or my single, The Threshold, because these include faces of real people, at least in one case, faces that are covered up, but they are still faces of real people, and this could lead to some potentially unethical things. Now, Dall-E isn't likely to create variations of these faces in unethical or untoward situations, but it could. And even if I had those people's permission to use their images, or if I used my own, it still could be potentially problematic. Dall-E 2 is a very powerful tool, but it's one that I think should be used very, very carefully. Another issue that comes up surrounding the usage of artificial intelligence like Dall-E is, does it replace the job of artistic creators? If you can use an artificial intelligence to create artwork, it might remove lots of graphic design jobs. Now, that's entirely possible, but it doesn't fully recreate the experience of working with a real person. In my experience working with designers, I can either go back and forth and have them make alterations to the design, and they can make these alterations understanding the context of what I'm asking for, and they can ask for clarification if they don't fully understand what I want. I don't think artificial intelligence is going to ever completely replace designers, because it can't ever fully understand exactly everything that we need. But it could be a very interesting tool for inspiration. For example, you could ask Dall-E to create a picture of a red flag floating in the sky over the sea, and it will give you some variations. You could then send those images to a designer who could fine-tune it and tweak it to exactly what you want, and end up with something that is created by a human, but inspired by an artificial intelligence. I personally think that's where software like this shines the brightest, is as a tool to inspire real human-made art. With all that said, let's jump back in and see what Dall-E comes up with some more of my album covers. Let's do one more. So we also have this one, and this is one that I think will be really interesting to test out because it's a painting of some really recognizable objects. We've got a star or a planet, and then definitely that's planet Earth there. And then here's the surface of the moon and space. So I think it will definitely recognize that we're in space and we're looking at planets, but exactly how those planets look, we'll have to find out. Wow. Okay, let's dive in. So here, this is again a painting. I believe it's probably also acrylic on canvas because it's the same artist who did this. Now let's take a look at the variations. Wow. So it's definitely got the space and the colored planets, but it didn't recognize that we had Earth for this one. So we haven't got an Earth stand-in, but we do have the surface of the moon, this painted surface. So this one, it's got a little bit of the surface of the moon, but it's mostly space, and it's created this nebula through the background. The original didn't have a nebula, it was just blank, vacant space. But with this one, you can see it's interpreted that we're in space and has created this nebula. We've got the sun here and then the moon. Still no Earth though. Here, this one's definitely recognized Earth, and this is a very similar composition, and it's recognized we're in space and again has inserted this nebula. It's taking these artistic licenses, which are really interesting. There's a lot of different possibilities for what this software could be used for, but one of the ones that I think is most appealing to me is to use it just to create ideas or to see alterations of an idea that you already have. So if you were working with a space motif and maybe it didn't occur to you to draw a nebula, you could put your artwork into something like Dall-E and it would show you a nebula in space, and you might be inspired by that to then draw your own. This one here has a big red planet or a star here, and again a glowing yellow planet here, the surface of the moon with these nice clean lines, and then here this looks like it could be a nebula, but it could also be light reflecting off of this planet here, which I think is really cool, that it's interpreted a bright object and then what that will do to the area surrounding it. Looks like a little smudge of paint here, which could be another planet. And then this last one, it looks like this ocean surface and a planet colliding into it. Wow, this big sun here. This stuff is so fascinating to me. It's so interesting how these images are created and what's going on in there. So I hope you enjoyed this dive into Dall-E. I think this software is super fascinating and I can't wait to try it out with some more things. I know this is a little bit different from what I normally do on the channel, but hopefully you are interested. And if you're interested in seeing some more of the things that I do where I actually make music, you might want to consider subscribing to the channel. In the background of this video, you've heard songs from these different albums. So if you're interested in hearing the full thing, there are links down below to Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, all those places online where you can find music and listen to it. Hopefully you found something that you liked in here and maybe you want to listen to it a little bit more. Leave a like if you liked the video and leave a comment with something that you might like to see Dall-E generate. What kind of ideas do you have for Dall-E to see?